Nadav and Avihu tragically die in this week's parsha. They do something that they should not have done. They enter into the Holy of Holies offering a strange offering to Hashem of incense that they were not told to offer. And a fire comes down from heaven. This is all recorded at the beginning of Vayikra, Perek Yud, at the beginning of Leviticus chapter 10. Vateitzei eish milifnei Hashem. A fire comes down from Hashem and consumes them. According to Chazal, their bodies were still intact. It seems that way from the story as well. So the fire didn't just vaporize them. It entered into their nostrils and incinerated their innards, but their bodies were still intact externally. I want to focus on Pasuk Dalet and Hey and just look at those words for just a moment. Torah says, Vayikra Moshe el Mishael ve'el el Tzafan, that after their deaths, Moshe calls to Mishael and El Tzafan, who were the sons of Uziel, who was the uncle of Avraham. So these are cousins. These are not Kohanim, these are Levites, right? So they don't have the same restrictions as the Kohanim. Vayomer Aleihem, he says to them, Kirvu, come close. Su'u et achechem, lift up your brothers, me'et b'nei HaKodesh, from away from the holy place, el michutz lamachaneh, and take them outside the camp. Now it seems that the language of the verbiage that Moshe Rabbeinu chooses to use in giving this commandment to his cousins is quite unusual. He says to them, Kirvu, come close. Why do you have to say come here? Come close. That's a little bit strange. And then he says, Su'u et achechem. If you wanted to say, remove your brethren from the holy place, what would you say? Kechu hotzi'u, take out. Right? Take out the bodies. Su'u et achechem. Su'u, lift up, is a strange verb to use, isn't it? As a matter of fact, Chazal say that the verb of sa, or lifting up, from Parshat Ki Tisa, there's a very famous theme within Chazal. I just give you one example from the Psikta Rabbati that mentions that the whole concept of Ki Tisa, when you lift up the heads of the Jewish people, that there the word does not even mean taking or lifting up, it means counting. Right? And so Chazal say it's a lashon of netilat harosh, taking off the head or removal of the head, but really it means that it's also a language of liromeim, to lift up, to exalt, to give honor to, or treat with honor. And so I think that perhaps there's a message of giving honor to the bodies of Nadav and Avihu. The pasuk in pasuk Hey it says, Vayikrivu, they came close. Vayisaum, they lifted them up, bechutanotam, with their tunics, el michutz lamachaneh, to the outside of the camp. Kasher diber Moshe, as Moshe had said. Now Moshe had never told them, lift them up with their tunics. So there seems to be something a little bit strange in this pasuk as well, that the Torah tells me that they did as Moshe had told them to do by lifting them up with their tunics. Now why do you have to tell me lift them up with their tunics? Basically you're telling me that they lifted them up while they were clothed and removed them from the camp. Is that really necessary? Is that information that I need? Would I have thought otherwise, that they would have taken them out unclothed out of the temple? That doesn't really make sense, does it? So if we take a look at the Ramban on this pasuk, the Ramban is very sensitive to this word dechutanotam. Take them out with their tunics, or they took them out with their tunics. And the Ramban says, and this is on your sheet, he says, Ki hayu lofshim bigdei kahuna. After all, when Nadav and Avihu died, they were wearing the priestly garments, because they felt that they needed to wear those garments when they were doing the avodah, when they were doing the priestly service. So what Moshe was really telling them is, don't put on their tachrichim, which is the shrouds that you put on the deceased. Don't do that in the presence of the Jewish community. That's not something that people should see, that they should be taken out with the tachrichim. What you should do is take them out of the camp. Their bodies should still be wearing the big day kahuna when you take them out. It's a sense of dignity that you are according to them that they died as Kohanim. People, their last vision of these people should be as Kohanim, as people who died in the service of Hashem. V'sham yafshitum bigdei ha-kahuna. There, once you're outside of the view of the rest of the camp, that's when you should change their garments, remove the bigdei kahuna, v'yalbishum tachrichei ha-meitim, and that's when you should put on the tachrichim. V'yikberu otam kemin hagam kisha'ar ha-meitim b'midbar, and that's when they would bury them according to the tradition that they had, which was to bury their dead in the desert. All of the people that died over the course of the 40 years were buried along the way in the desert. But the instructions that they understood from Moshe was that when he said Se'u, when he said lift up, it was more than just physically carrying them out of the holy place. What he meant to say when he said Se'u et achechem, accord dignity to your brethren. And they understood that what Moshe was communicating to them was ensure that their stature in the eyes of the Jewish people remains as Kohanim, and therefore don't remove their garments until after they've left. Now, with this, perhaps we can understand a very strange connection. If we're understanding, if the Ramban's understanding, I think, which is of course the correct understanding of how we know that Moshe really was communicating that to them. They understood from Moshe's words that he wanted their bodies to bear this priestly appearance as they were being taken out of the camp. We might be able to understand now a very strange connection that is created by the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim, for those of you who have ever studied the Baal HaTurim, sometimes what he does is that he will find a word that is unusual within the Chumash, and he will show you that in the one or two other places in all of Tanakh where that word appears, and he will create a scriptural connection. Sometimes he will explain it, and sometimes he'll leave it cryptically for us to decipher on our own. And so the Baal HaTurim says something very strange over here. And this is on the bottom of your sheet. The Baal HaTurim says the word Vayisa'um, in that particular conjugation, they lifted them up. In that exact conjugation and the exact nikud, the exact spelling and so forth, appears twice, he says, in all of Tanakh. It here appears once here, Vayisa'um b'chutanotam, that they carried or they lifted them up with their tunics. And there's another place in Sefer Divrei Hayamim, in the book of Chronicles, the first book of Chronicles, having to do with the daughters of Eleazar. Eleazar, the Kohen Gadol, after his father Aharon had passed away. The pasuk in Tanakh records, and this is in Divrei Hayamim Aleph, Chav Gimel pasuk Chav Bet. It says, "Vayomot Eleazar," that Eleazar passed away. V'lo hayu lo banim ki im banot. He only had daughters; he didn't have sons. Vayisa'um b'nei Kish achehem. And as a way of according honor to Eleazar's daughters, their cousins, the children of Kish, married them so that the estate would stay within the Levite family. Yeah, the Levite mishpacha. And so this is the only other place in all of Tanakh where the word Vayisa'um appears. Now, what does the word Vayisa'um in that context mean? It means marriage. Because what is the word marriage? Nisuin, right? Lisa, right? Right? A man marries a woman. Nisuin is the lifting up. How is that? How is nisuin a lifting up? It's the same. It's the same verb as kitisa and su'u. It's all the same family of verb. And here it says Vayisa'um b'nei Kish, that the cousins married the daughters of Eleazar, what's the connection? So what's the connection the Baal HaTurim is making between marrying these daughters of Eleazar and the lifting up of the corpses of Nadav and Avihu with their tunics? So listen, look at this amazing connection that he creates. He says, you see from here that Hanosei Isha Chayav Lahalbisha. That when you marry a woman, you're obligated to provide her with a wardrobe. That's what you learn from here, says the Baal HaTurim. The fact that the Torah makes this connection, that the only two places in all of Tanakh that have the word Vayisa'um is to lift up people with their priestly tunics. And marrying the daughters of Eleazar teaches me that when you marry a woman, you have to accord her the dignity of a wardrobe. That's the connection. Kedichtiv kisuta lo yigra. Because as the Torah itself says, she'era kisuta va'onata lo yigra. When a man marries a woman, he must provide her with certain basic necessities and things that are according to her honor. And one of those things are her kasut, are her clothing. And he says, V'zehu vayisa'um b'nei kish, vayisa'um b'chutanotam. And that's why the verb appears in these two places alone. Shekevan shenisa'um yitchayvu b'chutanotam. That once you marry these women, you are obligated to give them their tunics, to give them their proper clothing. But it goes much, much beyond that. Is that what it's saying is that the word lisa, in the association of marriage, is that when a man marries a woman, he has to provide her with the dignity that is befitting to her stature. And that what Nadav and Avihu represented was that Moshe had the sensitivity to say that because these people died in the service of Hashem, and they had a certain image that the people were used to seeing, I don't want to in any way have that image to be demoted. And if therefore you represent a certain image, so that when you marry a woman, you have to convey that image, that elevated status, has to immediately translate to her, and therefore her wardrobe has to be a reflection of either the man's status or the status that the woman had before she got married. So therefore the obligation of the husband is either to provide his wife with a wardrobe lifestyle that she was used to having before she was married, or if she comes from a less privileged status than the husband, he has to provide her with a status that isn't commensurate to his status within society. And that's the idea of lisa, is to elevate, an elevation of status that occurs through the course of marriage.
Can I have another suggestion?
Yes, please.
Maybe he's acknowledging man marrying the woman, acknowledging her role in the BAYT. She is a priestess.
She's a priestess. Yes. So there's the connection there. However, that's a connection that you can certainly make. That's not the connection that the Baal HaTurim is making. He's relating it directly to clothing. But you can certainly make the connection if you want. You can look at the two and say that the wife is like a priest as well. I just wanted to make one more connection if I can. This Ramban about Nadav and Avihu's clothing, about the necessity to preserve one's stature. You know, the Ramban also says, and this is the part that we didn't yet read in the Ramban, the last line in the Ramban stated, V'hinei achar kain, that after Nadav and Avihu died and after they removed the tunics, what did they do with the tunics? What do you think they did with them? Did they put them into geniza? Did they burn them? No, it's not what the Ramban says. Tiharu habigadim hakedoshim, they purified these holy clothes by immersing them in a mikveh. V'hayu l'sha'ar hakohanim, and then they were given to the other kohanim. And this again shows you that their bodies were not damaged on the exterior. The fire only injured them internally, so that their bodies were intact, the clothing was intact. They looked like they were sleeping when they died. And so they took off their clothes, and they purified the clothes, and they just gave them to other kohanim. In 2003, there was a terrible, terrible pigua with a girl named Nava Applebaum. You're all familiar with the story. She and her father were killed in a pigua, in a terrorist attack, at a cafe the night before her wedding. The day before her wedding. And this Ramban jars my memory every time I look at this Ramban. It reminds me of what had happened. She had a wedding gown that she never wore, and they didn't put her dress into Geniza. What they did was, it was used to make a paroches at the Aron of Kever Rachel. And I'm not going to get verklempt, I promise. Just give me a minute. And then they wrote Kalala Netzach, they wrote that eternal bride on the paroches that they made from her, the material of her wedding gown. That's what I think is prophetically being conveyed by this Ramban. And her skirt, that from the gown was made into a chuppah, which has now been used a number of times for various of her family members. The greatest honor that you can show to someone's memory is to use their effects to live life to the fullest and to continue a legacy of greatness that person represented. So what this Ramban is trying to communicate to us is that the clothing and what you do with that clothing is accorded with proper dignity, preserve the image of the individual even after they've deceased, after they've left the world, and then use those persons' effects for great things to preserve their legacy even after they pass away. Even if their leaving this world could have been through a tragedy, but if you can perpetuate their lives in some way by using their effects in a beautiful way to perpetuate what they stood for, then that's what this is all about. We have to hold on to the memory of people who have left this world. We have to hold on to their memory with dignity, just as Nadav and Avihu were only divested of their priestly garments once they were out of the camp. But then, as the Ramban says, once you've shown them proper dignity and they've been now buried properly, purify those garments for future use in the Mishkan. And that's what people have to do. That's one of the ways that you go through the mourning process, is that you make sure that through the process of the burial, you accord proper dignity to the decedent, but then you have to continue living life, and you have to move on from that point and take those persons' effects and that legacy and continue living life and perpetuating what those individuals stood for. That's what the Ramban is referring to when he talks about the clothes of Nadav and Avihu, that they were used for future Kohanim. So we should all be zocheh to gain strength from those who have lived before us and lived lives of virtue and integrity. Give honor to that integrity by continuing to take the relics of those people's lives and using them to strengthen our own lives. Have a great day.
Thank you.